Welcome to the new season of Love Thy Number. I am so excited to share stories from people who are loving the gift of their own Enneagram numbers. I'm Danae King. I'm a Type 7, and I'm so happy to host this conversation with you.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Danae.
I have a very special guest on the podcast today. For those of you that are listening just on the podcast, I wish you would just hop over to YouTube just so you could put a face with this name, and what a beautiful face.
Oh, thank you.
You look fabulous. This is my cousin-in-law. She is married to my first cousin, Paulk, and this is Sarah. And I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
This is fun. I want to just go ahead and tell people a little bit about you. Of course, how long have you and Brock been married? Forever?
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah, we hit 15 during the pandemic.
Oh, wonderful. Isn't that special?
It was very special. It's very special.
You can tell us about your anniversary dinner.
He made me dinner. But it was just fun. The kids and us just sat around the table, and I'm so grateful. So we had plans to have a big trip. We try to go away every year. It didn't happen because that was in April, and nobody was going anywhere in April. So
yep. But all the plans I had canceled. That's what
yes.
I was hearing. The cancel culture. It was like, well, this was canceled and this was canceled.
Oh.
So I have known that you've known about the Enneagram for a while, and it's just, our paths don't cross that often. You live in Texas. But we got together for our grandmother's birthday last October, and a lot of our family is, they love the Enneagram. So we had all this Enneagram conversation, and I had known not too much before that you were a type, say it.
6 wing 5.
6 wing 5. And here's what's fascinating. I've been doing this podcast for a while, and you are the first 6.
Oh, wow. No pressure.
I know. So that's what when we were talking earlier, it was like, what was I just going to tell you? That was it. That you're the 6 I've had on, which is like, I don't know why. I guess.
Like, supposedly we're the most prevalent number. I mean, I guess that may be urban legend, but there's belief that there's more 6s than any other type, which is funny because I don't run into a lot of 6s either. Maybe we're embarrassed and we don't tell a lot of people.
Well, let me just tell everybody a little bit about Sarah, other than being my beautiful cousin. Sarah is an author and a writer and also a ghostwriter. And I so bad want you to spill the beans and tell me the big.
I know. I'd love to spill it too, but those darn NDAs, they make you sign.
Yes. New York Times bestseller. So
yeah, I did ghostwrite for one of those. Yep. I'm not a New York Times bestseller. Let's be clear.
You were a ghostwriter before. So you don't get the public credit. But you've also written a book that we could talk about. It's called Trauma is a Team Sport. Mm-hmm. That was a true story that you actually co-authored. Actually, you wrote it, and he.
Yeah, it was a collaboration. So that's a collaborative author book. So it's called Trauma is a Team Sport. And it's about Tyson Deaver, who has a extremely compelling story. When it's not a pandemic, he's on a speaking route, going around the nation. He talks to 75,000 students a year. He has a grant with TxDOT. He was run over, doing nothing wrong, and was run over by a reckless driver and was paralyzed from the waist down. And he has a really, really impressive story and background, and he just has a grit and a can-do attitude that I've never experienced to that capacity before. And so it was really, I think that was one of my first full books where I was involved from get-go, from client sign to publishing. And it was really, really hands-on, sat around their dining room table, interviewed the entire interviewed the family, and it was really interesting because you'd hear different points of view. Everybody went through the same crisis, but everybody had their own mini crisis within the giant crisis. It was fascinating. So
yeah, I should have brought the book out. It's in my bedroom. No.
Well, you can find it on Amazon.com.
Well, yes, you can. And I will link to your website where you can also see it. But you've written for a long time. You are a writer at heart, journalist, your degree in journalism, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I studied from the Journalism and Mass Communication department at ACU. I have a degree in integrated marketing communication. So it's basically just, my parents were like, what even is that? It's advertising and PR, basically. And I did PR at the beginning and started out, which is perfect for a 6, honestly, because a PR pro is somebody who's spotting massive public relation crises, worst case scenarios down the road and trying to stop them from happening or put band-aids on them when they do. But I ended up going into journalism writing and I love it. It was meant for me. So
This is totally off cuff. We didn't even mention this, but did you watch Mad Men?
I watched part of it. When they started making really bad decisions, I can't handle it. Which is very 6. Like I just can't. I can't deal with the worst. I can see what's going to happen. Like I look at the look on his face when he looked at, I don't remember who he had an affair with, his secretary or whoever it was in the plot. And I was like, nope, I can't do this anymore. Nope, I'm out.
Yeah, I love it. Well, so yeah, that was just a little detour there. But recently, well, you've written a lot for Success Magazine. You've written a lot for Direct Selling Magazine.
Direct Selling News, Success from Home Magazine, success.com.
And yes, so a most recent article of yours was in success.com online called The Enneagram at Work.
Yes.
You did a beautiful job making it. I mean, it's an article. Somebody says, hey, write an article about all 9 types and how they are at work. And just do it in one article.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, this is kind of like a lifetime journey, but you did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
So in that, did you do a lot of your research online, or did you actually get to talk to people who had their experience from, or are you just going on your own and your husband's work environment?
Yeah, so it was massive hybrid of all those things. So I, of course I've read all the books and went to all the conferences and taken the webinars just like everybody else. I'm assuming that listens, loves The Road Back to You, things like that. So all of those kind of distilled into that as well. But then I also interviewed an Enneagram expert who's a teacher and a coach, Casey McCollum, who does great work with offices and nonprofits. And he really guides them through the work of developing compassion in the office and in your organizations, which I've noticed about the Enneagram. And one of his concerns when I reached out to him was that there's so much about the Enneagram now. There's so many different articles, but it's easily weaponized, I guess would be a way to put it. And so because it's easy to look at, oh, you're a 7, I know exactly what's wrong with you. Oh, you're a 6, I know exactly what's wrong with you. That kind of a thing. And it's kind of used as a dig. And so the goal with that article was to help people create compassion within the office workspace. So if you have an annoying coworker, you realize, oh, they're not just trying to annoy me. Like that is the way that they're wired. And they're coming at this from a totally different place than I am. And I need to respect that and understand the value that they bring. And it can just revolutionize the way you work together.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And I know back when I used to work in corporate America, I worked with my husband in his company, and I didn't know the Enneagram back then. That's been 20 years ago. But there was one of the engineers who did the design work. We sold voice over IP systems. So they were very technical, especially when it's a big company and blah, 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 all the data packets and all those wonderful things. Well, he would say, well, we could do this, but then if this happened, well, we might want to do this. So while he was so thorough and so good at his job, it about drove Doug crazy.
I was going to say, that was the person that drove you crazy. I totally understand him, though.
Yes, he would go to all the way out to the very worst case scenario. And I hate that about, the stereotype of a 6. But we were just like, just do it. Just get it, check it off. This will do. And if the problem happens later, then we'll deal with it. But
Yeah.
I look now and think, oh, bless his heart.
He had to live with that every day. Yeah. Well, you say stereotype. I see it. I've come to view it as a superpower now. So I used to think that everyone else saw the worst case scenarios around them. They would plan a trip and realize that, oh, wait, you might get, mugged here, or wait, that restaurant doesn't have all these different layers of worst case scenarios. And then I just assumed everybody saw them, and then realized that's not a big deal. Like, I just assumed everybody else saw them and just kind of brushed them off like it wasn't a big deal. And when I realized, oh, wait, I'm not just being a Debbie Downer in the room. This is something I have that other people don't have. Then it was like, okay, this is, we're speaking a different language. We're coming at it from a different place.
And that's the term, speaking a different language.
Yeah.
How did you first come across the Enneagram? What was your first introduction?
Well, I did what you're not supposed to do, which is I took an online quiz.
Did somebody tell you to, or?
I cannot remember. I just remember there being chatter about it, so much so that I was like, oh, and it's so, it draws you in because it kind of feeds that magazine quiz that everybody loves to take. Like, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Like, it's a shortcut to self-awareness. And I loved that idea of it. Oh, I could learn more about myself and have different words and understand who I am and understand my husband, understand my kids, So I took it, and it told me I was a 1.
And yeah. I think a few years ago, I remember you saying you and Brock were both 1s.
Yeah, he's a 1, and I thought I was a 1. And because so, I relate a lot to a 1, and I look a lot like a 1, yeah. Kind of on the surface, I think, because I'm very detail oriented. I'm always punctual. I cannot stand flakiness. If you say you're going to do something, do it. I think I emailed you 3 times because I was going to be like 3 minutes late to our meeting or whatever. If I say I'm going to show up, I want to show up. So that's all. I expect people to be reliable. And I think I looked at that for 18 months. I thought I was a 1. And I looked at that and assumed that was about reliability and thoroughness and detail and doing the right thing. And I look back on it now and I realize, I think that was about trust. If you're going to flake out on me, I can't trust you. 1/6s really struggle with trusting authority, trusting anybody. Very guarded. It's one of our biggest, I wouldn't say flaws, hurdles we have to overcome.
It's that blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah, right.
We need you. We need people like you who do look for the assurance and how we can trust a situation. I am very grateful that you are out there. I know one girl in a conference that I was at, she was a 6 or is a 6. And I remember her saying, as soon as she walks onto an airplane, she locates all the exits.
Oh, yeah.
See, duh.
Of course we do.
I just want to make sure I'm in a seat that can recline. And I don't even think about that. But she also said she scans the plane and looks who might be suspicious, might look suspicious.
We're the worst today. We are. No, I go to a restaurant and I know where my exits are.
But you're the person I want to travel with.
Yeah.
You're the person I want on my team.
You can have fun. We'll have the neuroses. It'll be fine. We'll keep you safe.
Thank you. We do need a lot of help. We do. Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty cool. But you took a test, and therein is just another example of don't totally take a test, rely on that, and be done with it. I had a friend who took a test, and she said, yep, I'm an 8. That's why I am the way I am. That's what the test said. And never went to look any further into, well, why might I think this way or relate to other people? So very good.
Because it looked at my behavior, and behavior. Yes, I am a 1. I mean, I really do. I'm a follow the rules kind of person. I really care about doing what's right, but my motivation for doing it is a little different than a 1's.
I'm so glad you said that. That is just the biggest point to reference. So I also wanted to discuss with you, as you are my 6th in this series called COVID Confessions. That was mine.
That was good. I like the echo, like the sound effect. I totally got it.
COVID Confessions. And it started, of course, with myself and realizing I'm not so unhappy being alone and chilled and not rushing all the time. It was such a big opposite, because I've always said I thrive on actually the tension of needing a last minute thing. I love to get things done at the last minute. And when I didn't have anything to do, as far as a deadline, I didn't know what to do. And after a while, I realized relaxing is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, in your very busy world, did you have any aha moments of, wow, as a 6, something might have come up in me that isn't actually a regular pattern?
Yeah. So I didn't even know the virus was coming, and I'll be honest, because as a 6, like, I know myself and my propensity to overthink, over prepare, be worried about things that aren't really going to happen. And so kind of as one of my protective measures, if I see something that's really, I know it's going to hit me at a pain point, you know what, I'm going to give myself the space to not dig into that. I don't need to know the details about it, right? Until I was at Costco, I guess it was March 14th. It was a Thursday. And I didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden I look around, the carts are full around me, like massive water bottle stashes. Everybody is just like panic hoarding, and I thought, oh, maybe this is a bigger deal. Maybe this is a bigger deal than I realized. And so I started to have that worst case scenario thinking, and I went home, and the first thing I did was I put flower seeds in the ground. Like I just needed to put seeds in the ground. I don't know what it was. And then the next day they came out with the stay-at-home orders, and it was the next day. I mean, that's how much I had distanced myself from it. So the next day they announced stay-at-home orders, and then I went outside in the backyard and pulled weeds and listened to Brene Brown's podcast, the very first episode where she talks about FFTs, F and first times.
Yep.
We're all going through this pandemic for the first time. We're all terrible at it. It was so comforting. So I just pulled weeds and cried and listened to Brene. And I don't know why, but for some reason I just realized somehow gardening was going to get me through the pandemic. And so very unnaturally 6. Like, I usually, if I'm going to do something big, I spend 1.5 years researching it, which is kind of the 5 wing. But I want to think through, how much is this going to cost? Where is that money going to come from? How am I going to, refund that money from our budget? Like, all of that is going through my mind, because I want to make the right decision, and I don't want to fail, but I just immediately tore out a huge portion of our backyard, like 13 feet by 30 feet. Ooh. And I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
You got out of your head for sure, being in the head triad.
Yeah, it was a little impulsive, but I also checked out every library book on flower gardening that was available. I paid $100 to take a webinar on how to do it. It's not like I went out and started digging. But anyway, so I planted the whole thing's been flowers. And that has been so rescuing for me during this, because every day's the same, but the garden's never the same, right? So I walk out every day. My day's the same, because I work from home. I worked from home before any of this started. And so I go outside and the garden changes every day, whether I want it to or not. And that's been really helpful.
I love that. That's probably going to be your quote.
Well,
well,
and also, 6s go to 3 and 9, right? For stress and security. I really prefer the words resource and rest. That helps me understand it a little better. But I really live in 3. I have a lot of 3 energy with my work. In fact, I was interviewing Casey, the Enneagram expert, for my article. And I said, hey, just for fun, like, I'll tell you what I am, but then you tell me what you think what you thought I was, just based off of our introductory emails. And he said, yeah, I totally thought you were a 3. So I have a lot of 3 energy. I live in 3, but the pandemic has made me lean into 9 kind of against my will a lot. And there's been a lot of times where I've wanted to keep doing and keep pushing and driving and achieving. I mean, I wrote a book during the pandemic for a client. I mean, I'm doing a lot during the pandemic. But then my body's done it twice during the pandemic. My body just shuts down. Like, it'll act like it's sick. We haven't been around anybody. We're not going anywhere. I'm not sick, but it acts sick, and I'm stuck in bed for a whole day, and it's like my body is saying, if you will not feel these feelings, we're going to feel them for you.
Oh, I so get that.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's one of those things I think we're seeing that on a collective level. I hear people talk about their bodies doing things. It's like, I don't ever have any trouble sleeping. Now I can't sleep. Or
right.
Any physical symptom, headaches. And I know I blogged about, or I put a post up that my body, everything ached. And as a 7, and I hate admitting these things because for one thing, my bottom instinct is self-preservation. So I don't think about, I've never thought I would get sick. I'm rarely sick. And the virus, it's like, I'm not going to get that. It took me a long time, and it was not political at all, to say, okay, fine, I'll wear a mask. It was more, I don't get sick. So one day, my body everything ached. And and I was so tired. I had no energy, and it was like my body hurt. Well, I'm not a worry person about my health, but I got online and I was Googling, like, I Googled Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't know why that one came up, but it was because it was my muscles. But yes, our bodies will tell us.
That's very 6 of you. WebMD and I are close. Yeah.
I always say, naturally, I go right towards the 8. I think that's a much stronger wing for me, but you're right. I hadn't really thought about that. And that's the thing. I never think I'm going to get sick, but if I am, it will be the worst thing. So, hello, 6 wing. Hello.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Oh, no. And we're talking about, again, the side of a 6 that really does investigate everything. I love that you do that. But there's such a joyful spirit about when you are in your healthier place. And, I know a couple 6s, and I would never, just automatically think, Debbie Downer, worry wart, because that's not the energy that comes out. I think it's more in here. You're the one who's playing that tape over and over.
Yeah, it's like a hamster wheel, just constantly going through everything that could possibly go wrong. And it sounds so negative thinking about all things that could go wrong, but it's more just preparedness. Like, we just want to know. And as you said that, I wondered if, like, your friend that thinks she got the results that she's an 8, so she's an 8. She's not going to dig. And 6s, especially 5s, we're constantly investigating. We're constantly checking. So I wonder if that's one of the reasons that I eventually did find out that I really am a 6, that it really finally became clear. And when I realized I was a 6, this didn't happen right then, but it kind of was the light bulb moment that I may not be. Every year I go on a trip with 11 of my friends. We're from all over the country, but we're all pastor wives. So we have totally different backgrounds, but we all have this shared experience. And every year we go somewhere different. And every year we bring in an outside speaker. We hire somebody to come and teach us something. It's a wonderful experience. And so, but when we do that, we're not only gaining the knowledge, but we metabolize it so quickly, because there's 12 of us in the room that are different, but all have the same foundation of how it's going to affect our lives. And so we just roll through it real fast. And you get to break everything down from 12 different viewpoints. We're all attacking it at the same time. It's really, really wonderful. So when you're we all decided we were going to read The Road Back to You and bring in a speaker who was actually an apprentice to Suzanne Stabile, who's the obviously one of the writers of that book. And she came in and walked us through the book. And surprisingly, there was like a shockingly high number of ones in that group, like just a disproportionate amount. And I was listening to them talk and I was like, I'm a 1 too. You know, we're so clean, we're so organized, you know, just wonderful. And listening to their experiences, I was like, oh, I don't really they were like, well, you have the inner critic. And I was like, I mean, kind of, doesn't everybody want to do the right thing and kind of second guess themselves? But it wasn't as tangible for me, wasn't as visceral for me. And then we had a Q&A session with this wonderful speaker. And I looked around the room and I was the only one who said they were a 1 that was asking questions. And I had so many questions.
Oh.
I wanted to, and it was all about, I noticed it was all about relationships. Okay, so if the mother-in-law that I love is this, what does that mean for me as this number? And if my sister-in-law is this and my husband is this, like I wanted to know how I connected with these relationships through the Enneagram. And the ones were content just to know that they were a 1, you know, they didn't have these other questions. So I thought, well, maybe that was kind of the nudge. And then when I figured out I was a 6, it was this, like, it's a really painful light bulb moment. I feel like lots of people have that. I don't feel like it's this sunshine moment where it's like, oh, now I have all my flaws distilled perfectly for me in one paragraph. That's great. Did you have that experience when you were 7? Most 7s just love that they're 7s that I've met.
Well, I'll tell you about that in just a second. But in hearing you talk about this, don't you feel like it just rested in your heart and in your soul when it's like, okay, I'm home? And that's why I think when knowing your number, which is, again, it's a launch pad. Just knowing your number is just a place to start, but it is a home base. And I feel like once you settle in, it gets settled in you. Didn't you feel like, okay, that's my home base? Couldn't you feel
Yeah, it was kind of like somebody been reading my mail is what it felt like.
Yes.
Like I would not have said that I was a worst case scenario thinker, which I feel like there has to be a better way to put that. That's such a trite way to put it.
There's a lot of terms lately that have really kind of like, we need to just rethink those. Like, and I just did a post about this, and it was a cartoon that said, what's the difference between being aggressive and being assertive? And the other,
your gender. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Like, I don't like this term. And a friend of mine has some different terms. I was like, oh, yes, because we all have a side of us that's, you know, not the one that you want to put on your resume. Yes, look at me. I'm the best worker because I'll throw the best parties. Well, you know, again, the stereotype, the meme. But for me, when my sister-in-law handed me the big blue book, as they call The Wisdom of the Enneagram. That was my first book. And she handed it to me and she said, read this, I think you're a 7. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is a 7? And what resonated with me, there were a lot of, I was like, yep, I know. I go from idea to idea and blah, blah, blah. But when it talked about how we have trouble sitting with grief and sorrow and pain. And it's like every time I talk about it, I get emotional. It was the realization that I wasn't broken. That because I would say, why can't I grieve like other people grieve?
Yeah.
So that's when I had to know more. And all the other stuff was like, oh, yeah. And I loved it. Yep. I love being the positive person and all of that. But it was being able to find that, again, the shadow part that said, you're not broken. You need to think, you need to work on this. And you can, I do grieve, but it's not like other people. So that was my
and that's okay. That's okay that you don't. And I think that's the beauty of the Enneagram, is that, like, our life is lived out on the backdrop of church, right? We're there all the time. We're constantly trying to help people and support families and lead. And once you walk alongside people for enough years, you realize that nothing is black and white. right? There's so much nuance to every marriage in crisis, to every family that's hurting, to every person that's trying to find their faith or regain their faith or doubting their faith or working, through some things in their life. And there's so much nuance to every situation. And if I'm going to be an effective and a compassionate leader, then I have to respect that others not only see the world differently, but they come from different backgrounds and they come with a different personality and a different motivation, and all the people around them are doing the same thing. So they're supported by different personalities and motivations, which impacts the way that they live life. And so the Enneagram gave me some language for, I already wanted to have that compassion, but it gave me some data to connect to the compassion that helps me just come at it a little bit more, I don't know, just more naturally, I think.
Oh, for sure. It's like I reference, I can't reference this movie because now I have lost the name of it.
Oh.
Gosh. Well, he falls in love with the girl and they know they're in love, but they can't, she's from another country and he's trying to say things and I think she speaks English, but he doesn't speak her native language. And so he goes and learns her language and comes back. And it's just so beautiful because there's certain things you can only say, and even colloquialisms. Is that how you say the word? Yeah. So there's these language barriers, and you want to try to say it, but and it's exactly what you're saying. Nobody speaks the exact same language as anybody else, but if I know what language you're speaking, and I'll try to communicate to you on that level, then you're not just in a one-sided conversation where you're the one trying to explain everything, and the reciprocal is missing if you can't connect with their language.
And it reduces your need for a cookie cutter religion, a cookie cutter faith, a cookie cutter expectation, because what I expect of you is different because of who you are. You may receive those expectations differently. So we just have to give people room to live their experience in the way that they were wired to experience it.
Empathy. It's the biggest.
Grace upon grace.
Oh, yes, it is. Let's see. Well, I was going to bring up this one article that you wrote because I think it's fascinating while we're wrapping this up. You have done interviews. Well, hey, you interviewed one of the Atlanta Braves. That's pretty impressive.
That was years ago. Wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, Ron Gann, he hadn't been around for a long time. Yes, but I know you spoke, or you went to the CBD symposium.
I did. You're going to call me out right here.
Huh?
You're going to call me out on my CBD connections right here.
Because it was, of course, the family was like, Sarah's writing about cannabis. The preacher's wife or the pastor's wife.
Yep.
But it ended up being a cover story for the magazine. It was so well done. And you had to speak to, I love how they call it, cannabis. What is it called?
Cannabis.
Cannabis.
Yeah, it's a whole industry. I'm telling you, it's the next big thing. I think I wrote it. I don't remember when I wrote it, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, has it been? But at that time, nobody was doing it. And I was sitting in a room with like 50 of the like multi-billion dollar, multi-million dollar companies in that industry niche that I was writing for. And they were all there asking questions, and like, you would try to ask them questions and they were being very coy because nobody was doing it yet. And I walked out of there and I was like, oh, this is the next big thing. And it's everywhere now. It's everywhere.
That had to be fascinating. The kind of, the people who jump in to something that might be taboo, but they see, okay, this is going to be a legitimate big thing. What kind of person did you feel? Could you tell? Were they a lot of threes? Who took the big leap, do you think?
In that room, it was full of, some heavy hitters. And these were the CEOs that flew in and had security in the hallway. This was a this was not like the marketing VP that came in to check it out. This was the people that founded and ran these businesses and were trying to decide if they were going to take the giant bound into dealing with the regulations that they were going to fight, and if it was worth it. But I was seated at a table, and I won't say the name of the business, but they had worked with, so the first cannabis FDA approved drug was, I think you say Epidiolex. I'm not a pharmacist. I'm not going to say it right. I probably butchered it, but that one was the first one that was FDA approved. And they had worked, this man, excuse me, at my table had worked with the child that was seizing nonstop, that led to the FDA approval of that drug. And he talked about how they were doing it, kind of secretly, I guess. I don't know. I don't know all the backdrop of that. And I didn't want to know. I was like, please don't, I don't want to give a deposition. But it was fascinating to think about all the hurdles that they had to go through, and it saved this child's life. I mean, drastically improved her quality of life. And when you listen to, there were massively brilliant experts in the room and a cannabis lawyer, and looking at the different elements that it can impact life positively for so many people without even treading any steps into the water of THC and hallucinogens or anything like that, psychoactive chemicals, not even touching it. But CBD can impact people. I don't take it. I'm not an evangelist for it, but I thought it was a really fascinating topic, and I loved getting to interview people for it and write about it.
I just think knowing your background and what you work in, in the spiritual community, you do your own work, but you and Brock are partners in leadership in your church. And for you to be presented with this opportunity, I just wonder, did this go through your mind that what are the people going to think when they see my name on this article? Did you go to that place of fear, or did you go to that place of, I'm going to go in there and research this, and I'm going to find out all the facts and come out, with the truth, with the whole story?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go in there with that mission?
I always walk into every project wanting to be respectful of who I am and who we represent, right? So that's always at the beginning of my thought process. However, I feel like I can write about just about anything and still be true and respectful to those two things. Mm-hmm. So the topic didn't scare me, no. And we serve and work with an incredible church family that I've never felt that way. It's never even crossed my mind to think that they might toss me out because I wrote about weed. They're just too wonderful and grace focused, and so that didn't ever cross my mind. But no, I feel like I could write about just about anything and still stay true to my integrity.
That is my number one word: integrity.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Well, do you have anything you want to share as Sarah Paulk, or as a Type 6, or any closing words?
I think the Enneagram has, it's such a powerful resource and a tool. I can nerd out about it a little too heavily, so I have to be careful. I was at a lunch one time with some friends, and I leaned over and I was like, hey, so do you ever talk about the Enneagram? She goes, I don't want to talk about the Enneagram. Oh. I talked about it all week. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Everybody's talking about it. So not everybody's excited to talk about it. So I try and temper my enthusiasm and just check to make sure somebody wants to talk about it before I nerd out totally. But the Enneagram it's made me so much more compassionate for myself, which, that overflows onto other people. Even though you're trying to constantly be compassionate towards others, if you're not compassionate toward yourself, eventually that becomes disingenuous, right? People see through that, because if you can't be compassionate towards yourself, you don't have enough to give. There's no tank to draw from. So I think, like, when we talk about stereotypical 6, I think about, for instance, like I don't need an adrenaline rush. I don't need this. I don't need to go rock climbing. I don't need to bungee jump. None of that. And for the longest time, I think I would have assumed that that kind of made me less fun, right? Because I'm not high risk. I'm not high impact. I'm not any of that. And like when I go on vacation, I'm all about experiencing beauty and connecting with the people I'm traveling with. So when I get back from a trip, I'm not the person who's like loves to tell a story about how we had a near-death experience or like, what a terrible trip. We almost died. Like, because our different types in a pandemic, it's so funny to see everybody's different types shining through. And I think we've decided that Brock is a 1, he wants to do the pandemic right. And I'm a 6, so I'm fearful of the consequences of doing it wrong. So
Oh my gosh. Oh,
we're glad.
It's going to work out fine.
Yeah.
Oh,
I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. He's a blast. He's the best.
What a time of revelation. I'm so grateful you were willing to come and share with me and our audience. I will put links to your website. I will put all your social places where people can contact you. And I hope anyone interested in the Enneagram article, I'll put that up specifically. So thank you, Sarah. I appreciate
thank you for having me. I love reading your work you're doing on the Enneagram. I always learn something. So thank you so much.
Oh, that means a lot. Well, I hope you and everyone listening gets to love and understand the joy of who you are by loving your own number. Thank you. Talk to you.
Thanks, Danae.